My name is John Robert. I manage a 700-acre farm south of Grinnell, close to the main highway. That particular week, we were working quickly to finish before the rain. The local co-op had issued a storm warning. I decided to extend my workday to complete the harvest of the western section of my cornfield. The field is expansive and flat, stretching seemingly endlessly. Navigating my combine through 12 rows felt like traversing a long corridor. The moon was bright, illuminating the field's edges. The air was crisp and dry. I was in my John Deere combine, equipped with a 12-row auger head, and the half-full grain bin was folded. The cab was warm, and the machinery hummed with a steady rhythm. I had coffee in a thermos and the local AM radio playing softly. The first time I heard something unusual, I initially attributed it to the radio. A faint voice cut through the engine's drone, calling out, "Help me." It sounded weak and airy. I lowered the radio volume and listened intently. Nothing. Only the crunching of corn stalks passing through the machine and the fan blowing chaff. I reasoned it might be coyotes yipping from the trees by the south fence, or perhaps the neighbors' calves, whose sounds sometimes carry a great distance. I reassured myself and continued driving. A few passes later, I heard it again. The same words, but this time coming from deeper within the field, not near the road. I slowed the combine at the end of a row and disengaged the cutting head. The sudden quiet made the night feel immense. I opened the cab door and stepped onto the ladder. A gentle breeze rustled the corn, like the sound of dry rain. Moonlight cast a pale glow over the rows. Help. The word was sharp, as if someone was speaking through a muffled cloth. I recalled the missing person posters displayed at Casey's in Grinnell. A 14-year-old girl named Abby Cole had been missing since September. She lived near Rock Creek State Park, approximately a mile and a half east of my farm, along the gravel road by the old elevator. Her picture depicted brown hair and a grey hoodie. I saw it every time I purchased diesel or coffee. I climbed down, retrieved my flashlight from the cab, and tucked a wrench into my jacket for protection. I left the combine's flashing lights on to guide my return. I quickly messaged my wife, saying I heard a noise in the west field and was investigating, noting my phone's low battery. I stepped into the corn rows. Dry leaves scraped against my jacket. The ground was firm on the surface but soft underneath. My boots crunched softly. After about 20 yards, the combine's lights were a faint glow. The rows felt constricting, and I moved towards the source of the voice. Going by. Feel. Help, please. The sound was very close now, almost beneath me. I stopped and aimed my flashlight downwards. It illuminated a flat, grey patch in the dirt, like a rectangle pressed into the ground. A small PVC pipe protruded at an angle, its end cleanly cut. A piece of duct tape was entangled in a corn root nearby. I knelt. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. I scraped away the dirt with my glove until I felt wood. The soil crumbled easily, like a crust. A sheet of plywood was buried under a few inches of dirt. I heard a faint breath through the pipe, followed by an indistinct sound. It wasn't a word. I took out my wrench and began to pry at the edge of the wood. One corner lifted slightly. Warm, musty air escaped. "Hold on," I whispered, my voice sounding strange in the silent field. The pipe tapped the wood as I pried harder. I managed to get my fingers under the sheet and lifted it a few inches. My flashlight revealed a small space below, no larger than a dog crate. I saw eyes reflecting the light, and a small mouth attempting to speak. A grey hoodie and brown hair clung to her forehead. It was her. Then I heard a rustle behind me. I froze, still holding the plywood. My flashlight shook, catching corn stalks bending where they shouldn't. Another sound, a gasp of breath, knocked the wind out of me. Someone was close by, breathing louder than mine own. A man stepped out 4 rows away. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a cap pulled low. He held a curved blade, perhaps a sickle, glinting in the moonlight. He said nothing. I released the plywood. It fell back with a soft thud. The pine clinked, and a faint sound came from below. Perhaps a word. I turned and ran, choosing a different road than the one I had entered through. Cornstalks snagged my jacket. Leaves whipped against my face. I aimed for the Combine's flashing lights, hoping I was headed in the right direction. Behind me, the corn rustled rapidly. He was chasing me. I zigzagged along the wheel tracks from the irrigation pivot, trying to evade him. My flashlight beam swung wildly, offering little help. The Combine's lights pulsed ahead, seeming impossibly far away. My boots hit a soft spot, and I sank to my ankles. I pulled free and continued running. I heard the blade swing, slicing a stalk with a sharp snap. He was close enough that I could smell sweat and something sour. I reached the Combine and scrambled up the ladder. It felt endless, like a dream where you struggle to move quickly. I slipped, banged my shin, and grabbed the railing. My jacket sleeve tore as I pulled myself into the cab. The door wasn't fully shut when the blade struck it. Metal clanged, and the sickle scraped the glass, leaving a white scratch. I slammed the latch shut. For a moment, I saw his eyes through the window, empty, as if he was simply performing a task. I started the Combine, lowered the head, and moved forward. I didn't want to hit him. I just wanted to escape. He stepped back and vanished into the corn, then reappeared, climbing the ladder. He swung again, hitting the side mirror and knocking it off. I pushed the throttle, and the Combine surged forward. Corn poured into the head. He dropped off. I swung wide onto the field's edge, my lights sweeping across the gravel road. The auger hit a branch and rattled. I drove the Combine onto County Road F27, bouncing hard as if I were desperately late for something. At my farmhouse, I locked the doors and called the Poweshiek County Sheriff. I provided them with the exact location and described everything. The voice, the pipe, the girl. 2 deputies and a state trooper met me at the field around 2:07 a.m. We parked on the road and walked in with flashlights and a K9 unit. It took a while to locate the spot again. Cornfields can be disorienting. The rectangle was there, but the plywood and pipe were gone. The dirt was loose and darker, indicating recent disturbance. The deputies spread out. The dog whined and pulled towards the east fence. We followed a trail to a drainage ditch, then to the neighbor's trees. Footprints in the gravel appeared smudged, as if someone had tried to erase them. We re-examined the hole. A deputy poked around, but found nothing. No box, just loose dirt and a scrap of grey fabric among the roots. It could have been anything. At 3:40 a.m., a deputy asked if I would give a statement at the station. I'd agreed. I wrote down everything and handed over my torn jacket. I arrived home as the sky began to lighten. The neighbor's grain bin fan started up, as it did on any harvest morning. By noon, people in town were talking. Some mentioned that Abby's father had been questioned previously and was known to have a temper. Nobody knew where Abby was. That night, I returned to work. The corn doesn't wait. I climbed into the cab. The scratch was still on the glass, the mirror gone. I finished the Westfield halfway through. The GPS displayed my path from the night before, a grey line crossing where the rectangle had been. I had driven over that very spot when I first heard her voice. The sheriff's dog continued barking towards the east fence all week. After a heavy rain, I found a piece of PVC pipe in the ditch near my mailbox. It was clean, with a fresh cut. No one found the plywood or Abby. The deputies told me to call if I heard anything else. I grew up in a tranquil town where life unfolded without much incident. Our family home was situated on the periphery of vast farmlands. Behind our house, a dirt road stretched between towering cornfields, serving as my personal playground. More than anything, I cherished biking as a child. It offered me a profound sense of liberation. I would cycle for hours after school, feeling the wind against my face, imagining myself in an important race. My parents had few concerns because the area was safe, and one could ride for miles without encountering another soul, save for an occasional farmer in a truck. The cornfields held a dual nature for me, both exhilarating and eerie. By day, the stalks swayed and gleamed golden. At night, bathed in the setting sun, they transformed into formidable black walls that whispered with the wind. Yet, I traversed those roads almost daily, feeling as though they were my own domain. One summer evening, when I was around 12, I set out on my bike. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky with an orange glow that imbued everything with warmth. I distinctly recall the scent of dust and corn, and the rhythmic buzz of cicadas. I was pedaling vigorously, standing on the pedals, pretending to be pursued by an invisible entity, a game I often played. But then, as I leaned into a turn, my front wheel struck some loose gravel. The bike slid out from under me, and I crashed hard onto the dirt. My knee scraped open, a sharp sting instantly, and my palms burned from bracing my fall. I remember lying there for a second, more annoyed than injured. I disliked falling, but I had done it often enough that I simply rose, dusted myself off, and checked the chain. That's when I sensed a subtle shift around me, as if the air itself had changed. Initially, I thought I heard the rustling of corn stalks moving, not from the wind, but as if something or someone was walking within. I froze, staring at the edge of the field. The corn was taller than me, taller than most adults, making it impossible to see more than a foot into its depths. I listened intently, my scraped knee throbbing, my hands trembling slightly. Then I saw him. A man emerged from the corn about 30 feet away. I don't know how long he had been standing there, or if he had been observing me beforehand, but the moment our eyes met, I knew something was wrong. He wasn't dressed like a farmer. His clothes were dirty, dark pants, a faded shirt, and he appeared disheveled. His face was pale, almost grey in the diminishing light, and his eyes seemed unnaturally wide, as if he hadn't slept in days. For a moment, I simply stood there, gripping my bike, trying to comprehend the situation. Perhaps he was just a pedestrian. Perhaps he lived nearby. But then he began to move, not walking, running. He broke into a full sprint directly towards me, with a heavy, stumbling speed that felt more animalistic than human. His arms pumped vigorously, and his facial expression remained fixed. His eyes were locked on me, as if I were prey. Panic seized me. I yanked my bike upright, disregarding the chain that had slipped halfway off. My knee screamed in pain as I attempted to pedal, but the wheel wouldn't catch immediately. Behind me, I could hear his footsteps pounding the dirt. I finally managed to coax the chain back into place by sheer luck, slammed my foot down, and the bike lurched forward. I didn't dare look back at first, but I could feel him gaining on me. The dirt road seemed endless, the sound of his running. It's something I'll never forget. Heavy, uneven, desperate. I pedaled harder than I ever had in my life. Tears welled in my eyes, and my chest burned from hyperventilating. When I finally risked a glance back, he was still there, still chasing me, perhaps only 20 feet away. His face appeared distorted, his mouth slightly agape, and his eyes were wide in the last remnants of sunlight. The road curved, and I cut the corner so sharply I nearly fell again. My house came into view far down the road, its porch light already on. I screamed for my mom, my voice cracking, which seemed to propel him to run even faster. I don't know how, but I made it to the driveway. I flung the bike down and sprinted to the porch, yelling the entire time. My dad stepped out, confused, asking what was wrong. I pointed back down the road, breathless, expecting to see the man still running. But there was nothing. The road was empty. The cornfield was still. No footsteps, no figure. My dad grabbed a flashlight and walked a short distance down the road, shining the beam into the corn, but he saw no one. My mom examined me, cleaning my knee while I tried to explain, between gasps of air, what had transpired. They kept suggesting I might have imagined it, or that it was just a farmer or a neighbor. but I knew what I had seen. For days afterward, I refused to ride my bike near the fields. I barely slept, and every time I looked out my window at night, I imagined him standing at the edge of the corn. My parents eventually relented and spoke to some neighbors about it. They said nobody had seen any strangers in the vicinity. One elderly farmer even chuckled, remarking that the road played tricks on children, and shadows moved strangely out there. But I know it wasn't a trick. I can still vividly picture him, the way his feet struck the dirt, the way he never stopped looking directly at me. Whoever he was, whatever he wanted, I was fortunate my bike functioned when it did. And the strangest part, when my dad returned from the road that night, he mentioned he had noticed footprints in the dust. They began at the edge of the corn and ran for a few dozen yards down the road before abruptly stopping, as if the man had simply vanished into thin air. Years have passed since then, but whenever I ride past a cornfield, I still experience that same sensation in my chest. The feeling of being watched, of something waiting just out of sight. I never discovered who that man was or why he came running at me from the cornfield that night. And perhaps it's better that way, because sometimes the most terrifying aspect of a memory isn't knowing what happened, but knowing it could happen again. My name is Stephen Jonathan. I'm 60 years old and live on a 200-acre farm just outside Mitchell, South Dakota. Corn mostly, flat fields stretching endlessly beneath the wide sky. My wife, Mary, passed away in April 2018. Heart failure, according to the coroner. She was 58. Since then, it's been just me and the land. The days blur together, tending the crops, fixing broken equipment, watching the horizon swallow the sun. The quiet used to comfort me. The farm was our life. Mary loved it here, especially the way the wind moved through the fields like something alive. After she died, I'd sit on the porch with coffee, staring at the corn rows, hoping to feel her presence again. Our son, Eric, 30, lives in Sioux Falls. He calls once a week, usually about money. He's been struggling, bad investments, creditors chasing him. I helped when I could, sending checks, but the farm isn't what it used to be. It started in late August 2018, when the heavy summer heat still clung to the air. Twilight was my time to walk the field edges, checking irrigation lines, looking for pests. The light turned golden, softening everything. One evening, as the sun bullet into the horizon, I saw something. A figure, maybe 50 yards deep in the corn, moving slowly between the rows. Tall, slender, dressed in something pale. The way it drifted reminded me of Mary, how she would wander the garden, lost in thought. I froze, squinting. My eyesight isn't great anymore. Maybe it was a trick of the light, shadows playing in the stalks. I called out, "Anyone there?" But the wind carried my voice away. I stepped into the field, boots sinking into the soil, leaves brushing my arms. By the time I reached the spot, nothing was there. Just bent stalks, maybe from wind or deer. I laughed it off, an old man seeing things. The next night it happened again, only closer to the house. The figure moved with purpose, weaving between the corn. I caught a glimpse, long hair, a familiar sway. My chest tightened. Mary. Impossible. I pushed through the rows, stalks snapping against my jacket. Mary. I shouted louder than I meant to. Silence. Only a faint trail in the dirt. I didn't mention it to Eric when he visited that weekend. He bought groceries, sat on the porch rambling about work, but his eyes kept darting toward the fields like he, too, was looking for something. "You holding up okay, Dad? All alone out here?" he asked. I told him I was fine. He left Sunday morning. That night, the figure returned, clearer this time. Her outline, her hair catching the fading light. I grabbed a flashlight and chased her farther into the corn. The rows closed in like a maze. I found nothing except a scarf. Mary's blue one with tiny flowers, snagged on a stalk. Days blurred again. The sightings became regular, always at twilight. Each time I found something, her old gardening glove half buried, a hairpin glinting in the dirt. Each discovery felt like a message, but from who? From her? Or from my own unraveling mind? I stopped walking the fields after dark, stayed inside but locked the doors. But the pull was strong, like the land itself was calling. One afternoon, desperate for answers, I searched the house. In Mary's dresser I found her journal. The last entries mentioned stomach cramps, dizziness, weakness, things she never told me about. Eric brought tea today. So thoughtful. He always made her herbal tea when he visited. My stomach turned. I remembered the autopsy. Traces of something odd in her system, dismissed as inconclusive. Heart failure, they said. Natural causes. Digging through the attic, I found bank statements, withdrawals I hadn't authorized, thousands sent to Eric's account. Then a life insurance policy. The beneficiary had been switched to him in 2021. My hands shook. Debt collectors had been hounding him for months. Had he been desperate enough to? I couldn't finish the thought. I called him, my voice steady but cold. What did you do to your mother? Silence, then a laugh, forced. Dad, you're scaring me. You need rest. His voice trembled beneath the calm. He hung up. That night, the figure came again, closer, beckoning me. I grabbed a lantern, followed. The corn parted like a curtain, leading me into a clearing. Someone had cut the stalks deliberately. In the center was a vial, half empty, its label scratched off. I pocketed it, heart pounding. Rat poison, I thought. Slow, subtle, mimicking organ failure. Thunder rolled. A storm was building. The wind bent the corn, rain starting to fall. Then I heard footsteps, heavy, deliberate. Eric stood at the clearing's edge, his face pale in the lantern glow. Dad, he said quietly, you're out here again. He stepped closer, rain streaking his jacket. In his hand, a rope coiled tight. People will understand, he said. You've been seeing things, talking about Mom. They'll call it grief. His eyes were empty, calculating. Suicide staged in the fields. The perfect story. Lightning cracked. Rain stung my face as he lunged. I swung the lantern, knocking his wrist. The rope fell. We wrestled, slipping in mud, corn stalks whipping like claws. He was stronger than I expected, fueled by something dark, guilt, maybe, or desperation. She was sick anyway, he hissed, and you're losing it. This is mercy. I broke free, stumbling into the rows. The field became a labyrinth. Rain and thunder swallowed every sound. I crouched low, watching him stalk through the stalks, calling my name. Time stretched, minutes, maybe hours, then faint sirens. Earlier that morning I had called the sheriff, left a vague message about my suspicions, the vial, the money. They must have come to check. Eric vanished into the storm. Days later, he was arrested in Sioux Falls, charged with murder and attempted murder. The poison matched traces from Mary's autopsy. Case closed, they said. But it isn't. I still see her at twilight, drifting through the corn. Not grief, not madness. Something else. Last week, her scarf appeared again, folded neatly on the porch. I burned it, but the fields feel alive, watching, whispering secrets they once shared. Some nights I hear footsteps outside, but no one is there, or maybe they're just waiting for the right moment.